Greetings, YouTube and fellow traditionalist Catholics. This is Sergius II, and welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be continuing our history lesson on the dark history of the popes. And here it is. We're continuing with our reading, A Dark History, the Popes, author Brenda Ralph Lewis. So in our last video, we had just finished off with the history of the dark papacy of Pope Sergius III. So right now we're in the era called Rule of the Harlots. So after Sergius III's death, his mistress, who's basically trying to establish power for herself and her son, the future Pope John the 11th. So here we are. So here we are at the Rule of the Harlots. And here we have Morazia, who is Sergius III's mistress and mother to their child. So here we are, Island of Dissidents. So let us begin. Most of the visitors to Morazia's establishment on the Isola Tibernia in Rome were young aristocrats and various churchmen, including bishops whose way of life was as far as could possibly be from the ascetic Christian ideal. Apart from sex, and lots of it, those men were more interested in chasing boar or in falconry, talking about hunting boars or falcons, well, chasing boars and falconry, which are people who wear a glove and have a falcon on their forearm. That's what it's saying. The standard entertainment of the upper classes in the medieval times of the upper of the upper classes in of the upper I'm sorry of the upper classes in medieval times, and while they attended mass and other church services, they usually did so with their spurs on and dagger in their belts. Their horses were their horses were at the ready outside, waiting for mass to end, so that their riders could leap into the saddle and dash off for an afternoon's hunting. These men enjoyed a lavish lifestyle to match. Their houses were the last word in luxury, featuring the finest decor and most expensive hangings in lush velvets. This was the kind of decadent living and decadent company Orazia most enjoyed. So you got a lot of powerful families, a lot of rich, wealthy people who had control of Rome and other places throughout Italy, living a lavish lifestyle. So what it's saying is like once mass was like over, first thing these people wanted to do is get on their horses once mass was over and start hunting, start going out hunting in the afternoon. And here we have a picture of Morazia and her son John the 11th right here. You can see. So I'm going to read this little quick sentence in bold print. John the 11th seen John the 11th seen here with his mother Morazia on the Isola Tibernia was only 21 years of age when she engineered his election as pope in 931. Okay, so John the 11th was 21 years old, trying to get into the church. So here we are. Um, so this blue part we just read was just what these aristocrats were doing with their lavish lives, and what they were doing like after mass was like over, and the luxuries they lived with. So here we are. The 10th century Lombard historian Bishop Luteprand of Cremona was virulently anti-Roman and anti-papal. However, rather more than a grain of truth was in the mix when he wrote in the Antipodosis, a history of the papacy from 886 to 950 CE. They hunted on horses with gold trappings, had rich banquets with dancing girls when the hunt was over, and, and retired with their whores to beds with the silk sheets and gold embroidered covers. All the Roman bishops were married, and their wives made silk dresses out of the sacred vestments. So, before chastity, and there's another word for it, to like to prevent the clergy from ever getting married and not having like having consummated relationships and marriages. Chastity and I forget the other word. It also starts with a C. I always have it in my head, but I always forget. But the clergy were allowed to marry uh, centuries before Saint Gregory VII established new rules that no one in the clergy can ever get married. You had to remain single, no relationships, nothing whatsoever. Celibacy, that's it. Chastity and celibacy, that's it. So yeah, celibacy, you can't get married. Chastity, you had to be a virgin for life. Again, no marriage, no relationship, no children, nothing whatsoever. You within the clergy had to have your only focus is to love God only. But we've had popes that have not followed that rule literally over the centuries. Well, for starters, as I've already one pope's name that I've already brought up, excuse me, Pope Alexander the Sixth. He violated the rules of chastity and celibacy. Gotten married, had children, and then had a mistress, and then had children with that mistress. So much for that rule being enforced. I think both Paul the Third and Gregory the 13th had children as well, so I think they didn't follow that rule much either. Well, I know for a fact that Paul the Third had a grandson who later became a cardinal. So therefore, yeah, no doubt that Paul the Third was married. But I gotta look into his history, despite the fact I only know a little, even though he was clearing up the mess that Clement VII had to put up with when Rome got sacked in 1527 because of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, and then also going on with the Reformation in Germany. But as I mentioned, it wouldn't be a century later till Saint Gregory VII established the rules of chastity and celibacy within the church. So let's continue on. Bishop Liu Liuprand branded Theodora and Morazia as two voluptuous imperial women who ruled the papacy of the 10th century. He maintained he maintained, was a shameless strumpet, at one time sole monarch of Rome, and shame shame, though it is to write it, exercised power like a man. Theodora's second daughter, another Theodora, did not escape censure, for she and her sister Leo Leoprand continued could surpass their mother in the ex in the exercises that Venus loves. This was hard on the younger Theodora, who, it appears, led a blameless life devoted to good works. But Liutprand's assessment of Morazia was much nearer the mark. For one thing, Morazia kept an establishment on the Isola Tibernia, an island in the middle of the river Tiber where modesty and morality were unknown. Turning to Theodora, Liutprand described in detail how she seduced a handsome young priest and obtained for him the bishopric of Bologna and the archbishopric of Ravenna. It seems, though, that Theodora later regretted her generosity. She soon missed her youthful lover, and in order to have him near her so that she could be his nightly companion, she summoned him to Rome. In 914, she made him pope as John X. He was probably the father of Theodora's younger daughter. Okay, a little bit of confusion whatsoever. There's two Theodoras. I'm a little mixed up here with one. So you had one. Uh, so you have a priest who later rose to the ranks and is now Pope John X. And here we are. I'm going to read this paragraph that's right here in this blue, in this, in this right here. So here we have a picture of Pope John X. So I'm going to read this part right here. My thumbs up. You can see it's in blue paragraph. Um well, this blue rectangular part. Sorry. Theodora's popes. Theodora was already a practiced pope maker by the time she engineered John X onto the throne of St. Peter in 914. One of her preferences was for mild-mannered popes she could push around, such as Benedict IV, who reigned uncomplainingly from 900 to 903 CE. On the other hand, Theodora also had a taste for thoroughgoing cads and debauchees. Debauchees, probably meaning debauchery. One of them was Lando I, who was pope for only 7 months between 913 and 914 CE. 913 to 914 CE. Little is known about Lando, but what was known was pretty dreadful. Lando, it appears, was ruined early on in life by spending too much time in the company of lewd women and, according to a medieval chronicler, was at last consumed. This, of course, was chronicler's code for the fate of a sinner felled by punishment from on high. So, so Theodora had John X under her control, and then mentions the same with Benedict IV, who ruled without any kind of complaints. So Theodora was a pope maker. In other words, how to get people on the papal throne. And then mentions Pope Lando. I don't know why it says Lando the First. There's only been one Pope Lando, so there shouldn't be no Roman numeral, because even online accounts say that he only went by Lando, not Lando the First. There's never been like a second or third or whatsoever. So Lando was only Pope for only 7 months. Little is known about him, as it says. So it looks like Lando's papacy and life was ruined by being in the comfort of lewd women, rowdy lewd women. So I'm going to read this short sentence right here in bold print. Pope John X was the lover of Morozia's mother. Okay, I see. Theodora. Okay, so John X was the lover to Maurezia's mother, Theodora. She made him pope in 914 CE, but he was hardly grateful. Instead, he deserted her and went off with a younger woman. Even though Theodora made John the 10th pope, but dumped Theodora and went for someone else instead while he was on the throne. So this is why it's called the rule of harlots. It looks like he had a lot of rowdy women who had found ways to make certain men pope, and then things may have went good or bad. So yeah. Okay. So John the 10th was pushed around by Theodora. Okay. So let us continue on. There's a lot more to go around. Okay then. Blotting the papal copybook, Pope John, it appears, fitted well into the ponocratic ethos he found in Rome. He was a skillful military commander who fought and won battles against the Muslim Saracens, but he blotted his copybook and did it with indelible ink through his nepotism, the enrichment of his family, and his almost complete lack of principle. Far from being grateful to Theodora for his elevation to the most exalted of church offices, John deserted her once he had set eyes on the delectable young daughter of Hugh of Provence, the future king of Italy. But Theodore's daughter, Maurizia, was not best pleased at the election, or rather the engineering of John the Tenth onto the throne of St. Peter, and she resolved to thwart both him and her mother with the with a and her mother with a candidate of her own, another John, her illegitimate son, by Pope Sergius III, who was born in around 910 CE. Okay, so I was wrong uh, in the last couple of, I think in the last video, believing that the child that Morazia and Sergius III had was illegitimate. So looks like I'm sorry. Looks like I was right from the very beginning that they had a child and it turned out to be illegitimate, but even though biological, despite the fact that Sergius was Pope at the time and had a mistress and had a 15-year-old mistress. So I was wrong. I thought that their child would actually be legitimate completely, but no. So I was right from the very beginning and wrong in some way. So yes. So it looks like John the 11th was the illegitimate son to both Morazia and Sergius III. So let's continue. Another John, her illegitimate son by Pope Sergius III, who was born in around 910 CE. When John the 10th became Pope, Morazia's son was only about 4 years old, a trifle young for the pontificate. Even in early medieval times when teenage popes were not unknown. Morazia, however, had the time to brew her plans while she waited. She had watched the Duchess Elgetrude in action at the Endeavor Synod, and afterwards took her as her role model. Like Elgetrude, like Elgetrude, Morazia was motivated by the same blind hatred, the same remorseless urge for retribution, and the same drive to parallel at all or any cost. And like so many people bent on revenge, Morazia had a long memory that kept past wrong vividly alive. In Maurezia's eyes, revenge was due at the at the outset for the death of her first husband. Court, sorry. In Maurezia's eyes, revenge was due at, at the outset for the death of her first husband, Count Alberic of Lombardy, whom she had married in 909 CE. Alberic was a born troublemaker, reared in a family skilled in the dark arts of intrigue, murder, adultery, simony, and almost every other profanity known to dissidents. The Counts of Lombardy were in addition adept at making popes, having put 7 members of their family on the throne of St. Peter after seizing control of papal elections. Maurizia, no mean exponent. Maurizia, no mean exponent of these abuses herself, quickly recognized her husband's potential and the ambition his upbringing had bred in him. She set about encouraging him to challenge Pope John X and march on Rome with a view of seizing the pontiff and his job with him. For once, though, Maurizia made a serious misjudgment. John X was no pushover like so many puppet popes in the rule of the harlots, but a tried and tested military leader with a notable victory to his credit. In 915 CE, John had taken to the field in person at the head of the army of the Christian League and smashed the Muslim Saracens' forces in a battle close to the river Garigliano, some 200 kilometers north of Rome. 9 years later, Maurizia succeeded in persuading Alberic to seize Rome and probably unseat Pope John X. But when Alberic marched on the Holy City, his defeat at the Battle of Orte in Lazio, central Italy, was just as resounding. Alberic was killed by his body. Sorry, let me read this again. Alberic was killed and his body mutilated. For good, Gaulish measure, the victorious Pope forced Maurizia to view what was left of her husband, a horrible experience she never forgot or forgave. So John X proved to be a great powerful general, taking on the Muslim Saracens of the Ottoman Empire. So Maurizia looks like her lover gone, her husband gone, while in battle, doing everything she can to get John X out of the way. Okay, let's continue on. At the same time, she felt obliged to put her revenge on hold, for her mother, Theodora, was still alive, perhaps out of a latent respect for Theodora, or maybe fearing a backlash from her supporters. Maurizia seems to have made no move against John, for the moment at least. Meanwhile, in 924 CE, Pope John stoked Maurizia's desire for revenge even further. He allied himself with the former Hugh of Provence, the new king of Italy, so engaging in Maurizia's power in Rome. 2 years later, in 926 CE, Maurizia married a second and highly influential husband, Godio, Count and Duke of Lucca and Margrave, or military governor of Tuscany. This marriage greatly strengthened this marriage greatly strengthened Maurizia's position, as did the death in 928 CE of Theodora. There were, of course, rumors that Maurizia had poisoned her, and she was certainly ruthless enough to do away with her own mother. Nevertheless, Theodore's death felicitated Maurezia's revenge, for, without his former patroness, Pope John X became more vulnerable. Together, Maurezia and her husband Guido saw to it that he soon became even more so. So, Maurezia poisons her mother. This strengthens her position. John X now more vulnerable than ever. So, all this just to get the power. Further into power, further into power, hoping to strengthen her position one day, hoping for that her son would one day take the throne. And we're just seeing more of it by the day. So we're gonna keep on going and going. So here we are. Murder at the Papal Palace. Okay, here we go. Let's see how this turns out. The couple arranged the murder of John Petrus, prefect of Rome, who was Pope John's brother. Petrus had received favors and lucrative offices from John that furious Roman nobles believed were not his due but were owed to them. However, there was more to the killing of Petrus, the pure revenge. He got in the way of Maurezia's plans by proving a stalwart support for his brother and a valuable aid in navigating safely the currents of intrigue, violence, and betrayal that marked the troubled waters of the 10th century papacy. But with John Petrus out of the way, the safeguards he provided vanished with him, and it was then a simple matter of arresting John and throwing him into prison in the Castel Sant'Angelo. He soon died, either smothered in bed, according to Liutprand, or a victim of anxiety, for which read stress, in a version of John's death by the French chronicler Flaudord. On the face of it, Maurizia now reigned supreme among the power brokers and pope makers of Rome. But this impression was deceptive because everything Maurizia had worked and schemed for was about to disintegrate. She set up two more puppet popes. The first was Leo VI, who came and went in a single year, 928 CE, and it was rumored was poisoned by Maurizia after a reign of only 7 months. His successor was Stephen VII, who fared a little better, reigning from 928 CE to the early months of 931 CE. This may have appeared to perform to the typical sequence of events, with short-lived popes succeeding each other and then dying or disappearing. So it looks like Maurizia created two more popes. That would be Leo VI. So it looks like Maurizia had him poisoned after being pope for 7 months. So let's see where, and then later with Stephen VII. So let's see what happens here. So again, Maurizia creates two new popes, Leo VI and Stephen VII. So it looks like Maurizia had Leo VI poisoned. Here we go. This may appear to conform to the typical sequence of events, with short-lived popes succeeding each other and then dying or disappearing. However, behind this familiar routine, Maurizia was biding her time until her illegitimate son John reached in age when she could make him pope in his turn. John was 21 years of age, just about old enough to assume the papal crown, when his mother at last achieved her ambition and created him Pope John the 11th in 931 CE. So, Maurizia finally got her wish. Her 21-year-old son now on the papal throne and assumed the title of Pope John the 11th. So, two popes she later created, one poisoned by her. So, I'm going to read this short bold print sentence that's right here about Pope Leo VI. That's him right there. So, Pope Leo VI was one of the many short-lived popes of the age of pornocracy. He was elected around June 928 CE and reigned for only 7 months. Little is known about him, either good or bad, apart from the fact that he is thought to be one of several pontiffs buried in St. Peter's Basilica. As soon as we get done with this reading, might have something to explain. Well, not explain, but bring up, because my mind's turning to thinking of a project, a writing project, not a history book, but something else. Want to get to. So her son is now the Pope. So now here we have Pope John the 11th. Now keep in mind, Sergius the Third and now John the 11th. They're part of the Tusculan clan, part of the family of the Counts of Tusculan that had control of Rome. Pornocracy. I'm still trying to look up that word. I don't know if it has to do with pornography or the fact that this powerful noble woman that was once delivered to the late Pope Sergius, because we already know what the word harlot means. It means prostitute. So, I mean, both Theodora and Maurizia had a thing for lavish men, powerful lavish men. So, using their lust and their beauties for just to get power, by all means. So here we go. Maria's second husband had died in 929 CE. 3 years later, John the 11th felicitated Maurizia's third marriage. Okay, let me read this again. I'm sorry. Maurizia's second husband had died in 929 CE. 3 years later, John the 11th felicitated Maurizia's third marriage to her old foe, King Hugh of Italy, who, as the late Guido's half-brother, was also her brother-in-law. This relationship contained one of two impediments to the marriage. For under church law, marriage between in-laws and marriage between in-laws was illegal and tantamount to incest. Another obstacle was the fact that Hugh already had a wife, but that was easily dealt with as Pope John arranged a quickie divorce. The Pope also presided at the wedding, lending lending it and lending it an air of legitimacy that, strictly speaking, it did not possess. John had steered his mother through otherwise impenetrable difficulties, but any satisfaction this gave Maurizia was very short-lived. Since her triumph over the late Pope John, since her triumph over the late, since her triumph over the late John X, she had reckoned without her second legitimate son, whose father had been Maurizia's first husband, Alberic, Count of Tuscany. The young Alberic II, intensely jealous of his elder half-brother, and the favor their mother had shown him demonst- soon demonstrated how true he was to the legacy of wickedness his ancestry had given him. Alberic was no friend of his mother's third husband either, and lost no time displaying his dislike. The marriage ceremony was scarcely over, and the guests were seated for the wedding breakfast when Alberic grossly insulted King Hugh. Hugh responded in kind, and the exchange of abuses moved on to violence when the king slapped Alberic for being clumsy. Alberic was incandescent at this public humiliation and swore revenge. What Alberic did next may also have been motivated by rumors that King Hugh intended to have him blinded, a common means in early medieval times for incapacitating rivals while leaving them alive to suffer. So now you've got John the XI's mother married to the King of Italy, which it states here, who was actually an enemy to her. Well, at a time was an enemy, but now there seems to be some arguments and then later fights with the king, and then of course his half brother. It's a bit of it seems like a mix up within family arguments. Okay, so the next one, Morazia imprisoned. Okay, Hugh and Morazia had been married only a few months when Alberic roused an armed mob. When Alberic roused an armed mob, worked them up into a vengeful fury, and advanced on the Castel Sant'Angelo, where the couple were staying. They were rudely awakened by the commotion outside, and Hugh, fearing he would be lynched, leaped out of bed and made his escape, wearing only his nightshirt. He did himself in a oh, I'm sorry, wearing only his nightshirt. He hid himself in a basket and was carried to safety by servants. He shinned he shinned down the city walls by means of a rope and fled, leaving Morazia to face her vengeful son alone. Alberic's vengeance was truly terrible. He imprisoned his mother in the deepest underground level of the Castel Sant'Angelo, and it is doubtful she ever saw daylight again. She was then 42 years old, still beautiful and fascinating, but now she was said to moulder away for the next 54 years into extreme old age. So Alberic, a noble, another son to Morazia, looks like deposed of her own power. Now made a prisoner in the Castel Sant'Angelo, and here is a picture of the Castel Sant'Angelo right here. This is like I don't know. It's like not far from St. Peter's. Not far from St. Peter's, but the Castel Sant'Angelo, even though a castle, but also a prison that was later used, or like a hiding place for any pope whatsoever. Because later on, I'll mention Pope Clement VII because he was put in because he had to stay in that fortress while the Holy Roman Emperor was sacking Rome. I think there's like a connection between St. Peter's to the Castel Sant'Angelo. So if anything happened at the Papacy, the Pope would make a run for it, as it is with you see with Pope Clement later on. Meanwhile, Alberic threw his bastard half brother Pope John the 11th in jail while he consolidated his power. Okay, so Alberic had his half-brother, bastard half-brother, illegitimate, of course, Pope John the 11th in jail. Once safely installed as ruler of Rome, Alberic released John from prison. Okay, so he's out, but had no intention of setting him free. Instead, he placed his half-brother under house arrest in the Church of St. John Lateran. Almost all of John's powers as Pope were removed from him, leaving him only the right to deliver the sacraments. So most of Pope John's powers were now gone by his own brother, his half-brother, and can only do the sacraments. So that's it. Can wield any kind of power, nothing else whatsoever except perform mass. That was about it. As it states here, can only deliver the sacraments. This, however, was no new experience for Pope John. All that happened was that he passed from the control of Morazia to the control of Alberic, who exercised both secular and ecclesiastical power in Rome. John lasted 4 years under the tutelage of his younger brother before dying in 935 CE, leaving Alberic to emulate their mother and grandmother as creator of popes over the next 22 years. Before his death at the age of 43 in 954 CE, Alberic appointed 4 popes, and on his deathbed nominated his own illegitimate son, Octavian, at age 16 as their successor. Octavian duly became pope in 955 CE, taking the name of John the 12th, and was a complete and utter catastrophe. Okay, now I remember Alberic is John the 12th's father. Now I remember, because Alberic takes control of Rome. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what society was like in Rome in the 10th century, because in the next video, I'm going to explain the history of John the 12th. So let me just go back. Let's see. Imprisoned his mother. Let's see. Threw his bastard brother, Pope John, in jail while he was consolidated his power. Once safely installed as ruler of Rome, Alberic released him. Ruler of Rome. So what I read from other sources with John the 12th, it looks like Rome at some point became somewhat of a principality. In other words, if anyone doesn't know what a principality is, it's kind of like a monarchy, but instead of a king in control, it's a prince that's in control. So Alberic made himself a prince to the city of Rome, Italy's capital. And as soon as John the 12th was 16 years old and took the papacy, at the same time, not only as Pope, but Prince of Rome. So he had like 2 different titles while controlling the church, which we're going to get into in the next video. So I'm sorry this took a while, but I wanted to get more on Morazia and her son, the future John, Morazia and her son, her illegitimate son, Pope John the 11th, the son of Pope Sergius III. So I'm going to read this short sentence right here. The Castel Sant'Angelo, which stands on the right bank of the Tiber River, was one of the papal residences. Okay, so not only a castle, but a residence to the Pope, if anything. The statue of an angel at the top gave the castle its name. It was originally built as a mausoleum by the Roman Emperor Hadrian between 135 and 139 CE. So this was built in the mid-2nd century during the reign of the Roman Emperor Hadrian. if you can see, I'm going to show you the picture one more time. Here's the Castel Sant'Angelo, and on the top is an angel, which that one paragraph mentions. Okay. So there you have it. Mozzarella power over the papacy is gone. John the 11th that now became Pope after Morazia put two more popes on the throne herself, even by the fact her mother Theodora put John the 10th on the throne herself as well. So there you have it. Um, a long timeline of people taking the chair of Peter after the death of Sergius III. John the 10th, Lando. Well, actually, Lando succeeded Sergius III. Lando, John the 10th, then Leo the 6th, Stephen the 7th. Now with John the 11th, and now that John the 11th was John the 11th was in prison for some time, then had his power stripped, everything else. So in the next video, we'll begin with John the 12th, who is by far one of the many worst popes in history of the papacy, and again is another member of the Council of Tusculum that had control of Rome. So this is going to be by far one of the most important videos ever. Okay, sorry this took a while. Again, if you love history, that's great. It's up to you if you want to like this video or not. I'm doing my best to bring as much information and teach you more as much as I possibly can. Okay. So tell me what you think. Comment below. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell beside it. And tell me what you think in the comments. So that wraps it up. Take care now. Bye.